My name's Jeff, and I am here today to talk about, if the slide would come up, making the case for continuous delivery. What I mean by making the case is about, basically about how do you sell this in an organization? How do you convince people that this is something worthwhile? And I think this is a really important point to be made because it does require some upfront investment. There's a cost associated with this, right? And we need to find a way of convincing people that it's an important thing to do. And I think traditionally we're not very good at making the case for things. We want people to trust us, and when you have a good trust relationship, that's fine. But a lot of the time that's not the situation that we're in, and we need to find ways of motivating the things we say. Really quick about me. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I know about half the people in the room already, I think. I won't tell you about all my experience and stuff. Let's just agree that I'm awesome. Yeah? and immensely qualified to talk about this subject.
Here, here.
Thank you. But I'm an Agile Coach. I have my own company, but I've been working here with the folks at Meltwater for about a year, which has been fantastic. Twitter, my email address. The only one I really want to touch on that I'll focus on is Scrum Beers, which again about half the people in the room have already been to, I think. But if you haven't, it's a group we meet about once a month and we talk about Agile related topics. It should probably be called Agile Beers, but we all did Scrum back when we first started it. So we started out about 6-7 years ago, something like that, I guess. We were 4 friends sitting around and getting drunk and complaining about our jobs. And now we are 650 members in Gothenburg, mostly complaining about our jobs. But, we have a chapter in Berlin. We started one in Oslo just recently. We have a chapter in Örebro and one in Eastern Canada, in a town nobody's ever heard of, so I won't get into that. I also helped organize the yearly conference together with some other people here. I know most of you have attended it, called Brewing Agile, which is, in true Gothenburg humor, a clever pun on Scrum Beers, you'd say. No? I tried. We have that about once a year, so that's it for that. So why do we even need to make the case for this? I mean, we're all in pretty full agreement. You guys showed up, right? So you obviously think that this is a good idea. So we shouldn't even need to make the case, right? Everybody should just agree with us. This is a big problem I have. I don't know if any of you guys find this, but when I know the right answer and people won't just listen to me, I find that very frustrating. Anybody else experience this? It's hard to be right all the time, right? It's really difficult, especially when people don't understand why they're wrong. No, but I think this is not the case. And something I decided a number of years ago was when I feel that I'm correct and other people don't agree with me, it's my failing if I can't convince them to see my viewpoint. So I work very hard on my ability to motivate things, and that's why I think this is important to talk about. You need to be able to win people over to your side. Because at the end of the day, it's not that they're wrong, it's that we're framing the discussion a little poorly. Basically, we're not talking about the same things, apples and oranges. Do I need to translate that expression? What do we say in Swedish for apples and oranges? Äppel och päron. Simple enough. But this is really what's happening, right? We have different groups of people, and they're interested in different things. It's the business side. They understand why new features are important. They can see the value of these things. It's very obvious to them why this is worth spending time and energy on. Whereas, on the development side, it's very obvious to us why our infrastructure is important to spend money on. But we don't always understand why we should be building these feature things, which, by the way, we also have to build, just for the record. We could build our infrastructure all day long, but if we didn't deliver anything on it, it wouldn't be very useful. So, and sometimes even, we need to convince people within our teams why these things are important to build, why they should change their way of working and their way of behaving. So this talk is mostly about trying to turn it into an apples and apples discussion, so that we're seeing things in the same way, because we really can't prioritize very well when we have two things and one of them we understand and one of them we don't. So basically, it's all about what do we need to be talking about to make it seem like this is valuable. Increase speed of feedback. This is one of the biggest upsides. I'm sorry, the picture's a little blurry. I couldn't find a nice one. if you're looking to sell it into your team, the first point's pretty important, right? Immediate feedback on code changes. Finding out if you've broken something that somebody else has built right away. We get that with continuous integration, but we get that to an even further degree with continuous delivery models. You know, we've got systems in place that warn us as we go along if we've broken things. So that's really valuable, because I don't know about you guys, but I find if I'm working on something and I find out 5 minutes after that it doesn't work, it's a lot easier to find the problem than if I find out 6 weeks after that it doesn't work. You know, when I still actually have the thing I was working on in my head, I generally find it easier to address the problem. Frequent releases let us get feedback from users more quickly. This is a great one for selling into the business. We can get information from our users and we can actually act on that. I don't know what your time is from the time somebody requests something to the time that it's delivered, but in a lot of organizations that can take a while, you know. Some organizations it's 10 years from the time somebody says they want something to the time it actually gets to the user. So being able to act on this information more quickly is really, really important. There's a great story I like to tell about this. How many people have heard the 40 Shades of Blue story? It's got nothing to do with 50 Shades of Grey, I promise. There's no way I could stand up here and tell that story. But the 40 Shades of Blue is an example from Google about they wanted to see if there was any particular color that caused more click-throughs on links, basically on their advertisements. Is there a color we can use that will give us more clicks on advertisements? Which, you know, when you've got, what has Google got, 1 billion users or something like that? You know, an optimization of 0.0001% is still a lot of money. So they found of the 40 shades of blue that they tested, that there was one that gave them a statistically higher number of click-throughs, which amounted to about $200 million a year, because, you know, they're Google, and again, tiny little amount is a huge amount of money for them. But, you know, if it took 6 months from the time that we found out this shade of blue is more valuable to the time we got it into production, we'd be losing a lot on that, you know? So being able to act on and gather feedback from our users a lot more quickly is a very valuable part. And it allows for experimentation, which is very much what I was just talking about, right? When we're having debates about whether the user wants it like this or the user wants it like that, instead of debating that stuff endlessly and forming committees and doing surveys and getting everybody's opinion, we can just put the stuff out, right? We can put it out for a week this way and put it out for a week that way, and either use data or feedback or whatever it is to actually do something about that. So we can try stuff out rather than debating it endlessly. So the improved feedback cycle is a very important point. Improve productivity and efficiency. You'll find you make a lot of headway talking about this sort of thing, right? One of the big things for making the apples and apples discussion is talking about money. Because we're talking about, you know, things that we often say in development people, you know, well, it's important. It's not important, it's expensive. It costs, you know, it's expensive to not do these things. So the efficiency is a lot about putting this into money, because people can understand why that feature is going to bring them money. They can't understand why that infrastructure is worth money. So, you know, how much time do you guys spend in a day setting up environments?
Too much.
Too much. Generally pretty significant. I read some number just while I was researching this that was like an average of 35% of a developer's time is spent setting up environments. I don't know. I didn't check that. This is a data science company, so you never say numbers without being very certain of where they come from. But this was some random number I read. The point is, it's very expensive, and that costs all of your time, and all of your time costs money, right? Operations spending minutes rather than days deploying stuff, how much money savings is that? Every time we go to put something in production, we sequester an operations team in a bunker for like a week, and they try to deploy stuff to servers manually. If that becomes push button, that's money in the bank, right? That's them doing something else that they weren't doing before. And I don't know if you know, but operations teams, sometimes they're busy. I mean, they get fires to deal with and whatnot. This is a really fun one, I think. How many bugs come from the manual release process itself? When we deploy something incorrectly with the wrong configuration, how many bugs come from that alone? That's a cost that we don't have to pay anymore. Not to mention the cost of writing it in Jira, going to a meeting to prioritize the ones that are most expensive, the cost of downtimes, any of that type of stuff. If we're not having these problems, then we're saving all that money. All of this is money. This one's a little harder to quantify, but when we're automating monotonous tasks, people are happier, and most research shows that people are happier are more productive. A little harder to put numbers on, but the rest, just do the math. Put a notepad beside your desk. Write down how many hours a day you spend setting up environments. How many hours a day you spend fixing bugs from the release process. How many hours a day you spend deploying stuff. Do the math on it, and all of a sudden it's a lot easier to make the argument of why we should be spending this money. Because the investment might not be as big as people think it is, right? It could be that it pays back in a week. It probably doesn't pay back in a week. Quality and reliability, yeah. Once we start automating the deployments, less stress, less mistakes. And mistakes in our industry can cost so much money. If you guys haven't read, I don't remember the name, I can send it out. I can post it on the meetup afterwards, but it's Dark Nights, the Case for DevOps or something like that. Somebody knows the article I'm talking about.
High frequency trading.
Sorry?
High frequency trading.
Yeah, the high frequency trading one. It's an example of where a botched deployment basically bankrupted a company inside of 15 minutes. I mean, but that's essentially what the story is. And this was not some mom and pop operation. This was like a major financial institution that was bankrupted by somebody putting the wrong script on the wrong server. And I mean, these mistakes are very, very expensive. Less stress means less mistakes. The continuous delivery is always encouraging the creation of some sort of safety nets, right? Some sort of systems, because we're operating under the assumption that human beings will make mistakes. I'm sure most of you believe you're infallible, but no. I really hope not. There's got to be one or two people in the room who think they are, but generally speaking, if you don't believe you make mistakes, do you believe your colleagues make mistakes? And continuous delivery heavily encourages the creation of safety nets to stop this stuff before it gets to production and causes us problems. Smaller changes are lower risk. I mean, changing 10,000 lines of code versus changing the name of a variable is just a lower risk, you know? So being able to deliver those smaller changes quickly is just better. Okay, that was a bad motivation there. Fixes are fast and secure. This is an important one. So, any of you who have a really, really long delivery process, you know, it takes you months to get stuff into production. When you have critical bugs, does it take you months to get fixes out? No, you get them out there fast, right? So you actually can deliver a lot faster than you do. You just don't most of the time. And the reason you don't is because you can't do that reliably, right? You can't put everything into production super fast. So the continuous delivery actually doesn't change the fast part so much in critical situations, but it does mean it's being done as a repeatable process. So it's a lot more secure, it's a lot safer. You're not going to break 10 other things while trying to fix the thing that you were setting out to fix. Again, I'm sure this never happens to anybody. So I thought this would be a cool acronym and everybody would instantly get it, but I tried this talk out earlier today. Nobody got it. This is my version of WYSIWYG, which everybody knows that one. Yeah, good. It's what you deploy is what you tested. I thought it was going to be really clever. It wasn't. But actually, this is an argument most people in your organization will get. How many of you have been in the situation where something went wrong in production, and we went looking to see whose fault it was, obviously, because that's the most important thing. We go looking to see whose fault it was, and the answer ends up being, well, it turns out that the testing environment didn't have the same stuff deployed to the production environment. Has that ever happened to anybody? Once or twice? It's okay to put your hands up. This is another thing about continuous delivery. And people in your organization, they'll get this because they've had their pet feature be destroyed by exactly this situation. The stuff that's being deployed is exactly the stuff that was under test. We're not rebuilding stuff. We're not doing a lot of manual configuration. We're removing those kinds of risks. And then if everything goes horribly wrong, because sometime it's probably going to go horribly wrong, we have automated rollbacks as our final safety net, which we can get back to when stuff worked is a pretty good feeling. Happier customers and stakeholders. This one's a pretty big claim. Does delivering the stuff faster actually make these people any happier? Well, here's an important one that I'm always trying to drive home to the development teams that I work with. The customer doesn't care how much code is checked in. There's absolutely no value to the customer that code is checked into the version control repository. They don't get anything from that. The only value to the customer is stuff that is in production that they can use. The amount of lines of code you writ or the amount of features you tested is not worth anything to them. Only the stuff that is out there for them to use is valuable. So, while this doesn't guarantee you're building the right thing, if we operate under the assumption that you're building the right thing, they're going to get it faster and therefore should hopefully be happier with the stuff that they're getting. So, increased customer satisfaction. Ability to deliver working software on demand. This is a big one for your stakeholders. I'm going to do a little bit of Swedish here, so anybody who can't follow, I'll do it in English. As long as stuff is klart I princip. Anybody know this one? Nearly done in English. Almost done. It's just, we just need to do that, and then more. This inhibits our ability to be agile. This inhibits our ability to change, which is what agility is all about. It stops us from being adaptable. Because if we invest a whole lot of time in building a feature, and then all of a sudden our priorities change, and that feature can't go to production, we have to make the decision then at that point whether we abandon all that work we put in, or we continue to invest in something that isn't the highest priority anymore, just so we can get that thing out. So the ability to always have deliverable, shippable software is essential to being able to be agile. Stuff that can be always put out. And this is what continuous delivery is about. Like, I want this now. I'm willing to go with less features. Let's push the button and put it into production. So I found a great quote from Martin Fowler that I thought I'd end with on this, where he's talking about what basically, how do you evaluate whether your continuous delivery is working. He says, the key is that a business sponsor could request the current development version of the software can be deployed into production at a moment's notice, and nobody would bat an eyelid, let alone panic. How many of you could put your software into production right now without any stress whatsoever? Hands? Oh, we got 1 and 2? Nice. Not many. Amazon puts it as releasing has to be boring. And this is what continuous delivery is all about, right? Like, let's stop panicking every time we have to put software into production. Because if things are stressful, if it's difficult to do, we're going to do it a lot less. We're not going to practice it. We're not going to get better at it. We're going to have no motivation to automate the stuff. And it's going to get harder every single time we do it. And we're going to do it less and less and have less and less happy customers. So that's more or less what I had to say. Shameless plug. It's not really though, because the book's free. And I brought some free copies up there on paper, so it's a little bit of a shameless plug. It has nothing to do with continuous delivery, by the way, but you know, you might enjoy it anyway. That's me. Thanks.
I've noticed that you can often avoid downtime as well. I mean, usually people deliver when they want to change the behavior of the software. Often when you do this, if you have this typical every month releases or something, you want to finish the whole feature. This is the way it's supposed to work after. And then you often have migration problems and data that needs to look different and so on. Often if you make this in 3 or 4 deliveries instead, you can have some redundancies in these intermediate deliveries, and then you don't need any downtime. But if you have this typical release cycles, this old-fashioned, then it takes a quarter of a year to get out this tiny little feature if it has to go in 4 releases. But if you can release like this, then it's very simple to work in these smaller steps. Suddenly things become so simple and easy that were kind of awkward.
By awkward you mean terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, you suddenly this working in small steps, developing in small steps becomes viable when you can release in small steps because you have something working there already. It doesn't matter so much if you haven't started deploying that, but you have a working system.
Anyone else?
I'm not convinced that the first page, I don't think that was an orange. It was way too small.
It was definitely an orange.
Or you had a really big
So
apple.
Anton just got back from San Francisco yesterday, so he's completely jet lagged and has no idea what he's talking about. Just for the record. That's not an orange?
Mandarin.
I think we're done now, right? Done.